Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Nemaha Valley Outdoors podcast. It's been a little bit, but we got Trent Crumpler on with Chest Thumper Outdoors. We tried this once and equipment was not cooperating, so we're back at it again, and we're going to talk a little bit about deer season, arrow builds, and all the wonderfuls. So,
sure, sounds good to me.
So, Trent, you do all the custom arrows and custom bow builds and stuff. That's got to be picking up for you quite a bit right now.
Slowing down, actually.
Really?
So, yeah. So usually my busiest time is from like end of July to really much end of July to like into August. Oh. Basically, there's a month span where I'm just absolutely slammed. And then usually the first 2 weeks of September, I'm pretty busy. But now it starts to slow down as everybody's getting ready and right there at that October 1st line. Like right now, I'm turning out custom builds. I've still got some trickling in, but I'm turning out custom builds as long as I have stuff in stock next day or in the next couple days usually.
Really?
Yeah, and at my peak busyness, I'm 3 weeks out. So right now I'm 2 days out at the most. Normally I'm 3 weeks out.
Huh. That's really good turnaround. I was looking at your website, and you don't just do bows. You custom build out, or excuse me, you don't just custom build arrows. You've been selling bows and stuff as well.
Yeah, basically, I'm pretty well a full service archery shop. I mean, it's out of my house right now. I'm working really hard and putting back as much money as I can to actually open a retail location next year. But I'm a full service shop. I have one of the new THP adapts in the house right now for a customer that I'm setting up. I just built him a custom dozen arrows. He ordered some Grim Reaper broadheads through me, some lighted nocks, and then the bow. So I'm upgrading the bow package to Trophy Ridge drop away rest, and I'll set everything up for him and ship it out. And then basically if he needs any help with anything, he can call me up and I can walk him through paper tuning or anything like that.
So you don't paper tune that there in your house?
I don't, and the reason why is I'm going to shoot that bow different than he shoots the bow. Especially, he's a 29-inch draw length, so he's an inch longer than me anyways. I'm very particular about this, and there's a lot of shops that if you take them your bow to paper tune, they do it. That it's absolutely the wrong way to do it. I won't go to shops. I don't go to any shops anymore, but back in the day, I would stop going to a shop if they wouldn't let me paper tune my bow. They can turn the wrenches. That's fine, but you need to be the one shooting your equipment because only you are going to shoot it that way.
Right.
So basically what I offer is, hey man, I can set you up. I can build everything. Make sure everything's in spec. I'll set your center shot on your rest, make sure it's all timed properly. Your cam timing's right, and I'll send it to you. And when you get it, I can walk you through paper tuning there at your house, or you can take it somewhere and have them paper tune, help you paper tune it or whatever. But I can't do it for you. It's just, even if we have the same exact stats, I'm going to hold the bow and shoot the bow differently than you. So you need to be the one doing the paper tuning.
And paper tuning, I don't paper tune my own. I'm the same way you used to be. I let one of my friends do that. He turns the wrenches and I shoot through the paper. Yep. But paper tuning is really not that overly difficult, is it?
No. And the other thing too is there's a ton of videos out there about, 10 steps to tune your bow. And a lot of people make it harder than it needs to be. My personal hunting setup, I paper tune it, and that's a good starting point. And then I broadhead tune, which is basically just making sure your broadheads and field points are hitting together. That's it. If my broadheads and field points are hitting together and everything's flying right, I'm ready to hunt. I don't need to, torque tune or walk back tune or French tune or this. It's a bunch of unnecessary extra steps. And I think that's why a lot of people are intimidated by tuning themselves, is there's so much info out there that it's overwhelming. And it doesn't need to be that hard.
Right. Well, and good broadheads, the vast majority out there, well, from my experience, the vast majority out there, they don't really fly different from field point. That's
because you're used to shooting a properly tuned bow. if you take a bow that's not properly tuned and shoot fixed blade broadhead and a field point, most of the time they don't fly the same.
Oh, no kidding.
Mm-hmm. You've had a good experience with having your bow properly tuned or pretty dang close. It sounds like for the majority of the time you've been shooting, and that's awesome. That's exactly what you want.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I know you use the Muzzy. Do you shoot the MX4s?
I'll bounce between the original 100 grains and the MX4s.
Okay, so the MX4 is one that people have notoriously had issues with flight if their bow isn't tuned.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah, so I mean, the tuned bow thing makes all the difference in the world.
Huh. And that's crazy because up into the last couple years, I never had my bow tuned.
Right.
Say, quote unquote, buy it at Shields or Cabela's, whatever, bring it home, sight it in, good to go for season.
Yeah.
So maybe I was swinging screwed up arrows. I don't know.
And that's possible. I mean, it's not impossible for a not tuned bow to shoot broadheads with field points. Like that happens. But it's not likely either. Especially, the MX4s are pretty compact, same with the MX3s. But you start getting into like NAP Thunderheads, stuff that has more surface area, that's when you really, really start to see those issues.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
And, one of my favorite questions, I do a lot of broadhead testing, and one of my favorite questions is, well, does it fly like a field point? I've tested on video at this point over 70 broadheads. Every single broadhead I've ever shot and tested flew like a field point because my bow was tuned. If your bow is properly tuned, everything flies. The one caveat to that is you can't shoot micro fletchings, a little bitty tiny fletchings, at a big fixed blade head, because then the fixed blade will try to steer the arrow instead of the fletchings. So that's kind of the one caveat. If you're shooting tiny fletchings, you're not going to be able to get away with a big fixed blade.
So are we talking big fixed blade like the, them big 4-inch heads that they'd use for turkeys, or what do we?
Well, for sure that. I mean, that's on a whole different world. I'm talking something like, let me think here. Something like a Simmons Tree Shark. That's a fixed head with a 2 1/16 inch cutting diameter. Like, I shot those for a year out of my compound bow at 270 feet a second. I had 3 3-inch feathers. There's a lot of surface area there and a lot of steering capability. If I'd have been trying to shoot that with blazers, no way.
Wow. See, and that's the stuff that you go to the store, if you don't have that base knowledge, you don't particularly think about stuff like that.
Sure.
You think, all right, here's our big broadhead, that's going to leave a big hole.
Yep. Well, and I know a lot of guys are shooting mechanicals because they couldn't get a fixed blade to fly. And I don't think you shouldn't shoot mechanicals. I just think if you're having flight issues, that's the wrong reason to shoot a mechanical. Because having a tuned bow is not only going to help with flight of your broadheads, but it's also going to make a big difference in penetration and overall performance of your arrow.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
If you have a properly tuned bow and your arrow's flying right, a mechanical is going to do better than if it's not. So I've heard guys before tell me, I shoot mechanicals, I don't need to tune. Well, that's not true, because you can take the performance of those mechanicals and increase them 20-30% just by having a properly tuned bow.
Right. See, I don't know about them mechanicals, just on the fact that I've had friends who've shot them and they would deflect. Mm-hmm. The arrow would deflect off bone, and I'm not saying this is necessarily true for all fixed blades, but I've never, maybe I've gotten lucky, but I've never deflected off bone. I rarely don't get pass-throughs.
Yeah, so a fixed head in general, just by nature of design, is going to be less deflection. So a deflection has a lot to do with your blade angle. So on a lot of mechanical heads, especially your big 2-inch cut, you have a blade angle that's like this, kind of like the pitch of a roof of a house. Mm-hmm. And anything like that, the bone rolls off of relatively easy, and it's going to cause deflections in one direction or the other. Another thing with a mechanical is they open. So sometimes if you're shooting a quartering shot, what you'll get is one blade will open and the other won't, and it'll cause a tumbling effect. With a fixed head, most everything is a steeper angle, and you don't have any openings, so that blade is already open when it hits, and that you're not causing any kind of tumbling effect because there's not something kicking open that causes your arrow to kind of whip or be weird. So generally speaking, a fixed head is going to deflect far less in far less situations than a mechanical.
And you kind of said those magic words of they don't open. That's just another reason why, you know, I never really played with them, because here's how I think about it. You know, if my fixed blade goes in and it, let's say for some reason it doesn't pass through, the deer runs off, there's no chance of those blades closing up. So you're just going to sit there and cut and cut and cut. As where, you know, if you think about it, if you don't get a full pass through and that arrow starts kind of pulling its way out, those blades are going to close along the way out, you know, so it's less damage happening internally. Now, that's just how I think about it, and that's why I've made the decisions I have to not steer away from fixed blade. But
yeah, I mean, that's a realistic factor. I mean, that is everything you described is completely true. You know, some broadheads do lock in the open position, and that kind of alleviates that problem, but it is still definitely a factor. And the vast majority of mechanical failures are going to be user error. Usually they didn't close the blades properly or put it together properly. With that said, not all of the failures are user error. So there's always a level of failure possibility with a mechanical broadhead, no matter the brand, no matter the style, it's always there. Like that chance is always there. Matter of fact, you'll see a lot of guys that, or a lot of companies that manufacture mechanicals, one of their big selling points is fail proof. But one thing you'll never see a fixed broadhead manufacturer put on their packaging is fail proof, because that's not a problem. There's no opening to happen. So those are all things to take into consideration. And I mean, the one advantage mechanical is going to give you is that big nasty cut. And
for sure.
I think I've kind of realized broadheads are a product that's situational. Most broadheads are going to do a great job at killing whatever you shoot. That's one thing my testing has shown me. Like, we'll say every broadhead I've tested, there's probably less than 5% that I personally wouldn't take in the woods with confidence. With that said, I think there's situations where certain broadheads make sense. Let me give you examples. Here in Illinois, I hunt field edges sometimes, especially once the corn comes out, the first couple days corn comes out. I'll go sit on a field edge and shoot a doe, shoot a couple does. I like mechanical broadheads in that situation because I'm shooting typically close shots because they walk field edges. Typically, there's nothing for that broadhead to hit on the way to the animal and deflect. And also because they're in a feeding situation, I can usually wait for a perfectly broadside or a more desirable shot to help reduce deflection issues. On the flip side, during rut time, during early season, I tend to hunt up against bedding areas, back in thick stuff. In those situations, mechanical broadheads make me a little more nervous because I can't cut shooting lanes here. Since I can't cut shooting lanes, I have little twigs and stuff like that to worry about for deflections. So you get in those tight quarters, and a fixed blade makes me feel a whole heck of a lot more comfortable because if I hit a small twig or something happens, I don't have to worry about the broadhead flying open and completely screwing up the trajectory of the arrow. That fixed blade, it'll still deflect, but it'll probably deflect less.
Right.
Now, here's another situation. I currently have permission on a small piece that is surrounded on all sides by neighbors. 2 of those sides, the neighbors don't like hunting. I'm shooting a big mechanical broadhead on that property because I want the biggest, nastiest cut I can give for that deer to die as quickly as possible. So I take mechanicals, I sharpen the crap out of them until they're nasty, nasty sharp, and that's what I'm going to shoot so they die as quick as possible so I don't have to worry about them running on the neighbors. So everything's kind of situational with broadheads.
Right. Is Illinois one of the states where you have to absolutely 100%, you have to get permission from landowner to go retrieve? I don't know off top head what states do it, but if you shoot an animal, you are allowed to. You're allowed the right to retrieve, I believe is how it's worded.
Yep, Illinois is not a right to retrieve state to the point. So some states say if you call conservation, you can go get the animal, but you can't have a weapon with you. So no bow, no rifle, whatever you were hunting with.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking of then.
Yeah, and some states do have a straight right to retrieve, where if you shoot the animal, you can go get the animal. You still can't take a weapon. Here in Illinois, I cannot trespass on private property without permission, period. So if I shoot the buck of a lifetime, it runs on a neighbor's property and dies, they absolutely hate hunting. And I go over and knock on their door and say, hey, I shot this deer, it ran on your property, can I get it? And they tell me no, I'm SOL. Even if I call a conservation officer, the conservation officers I talk to usually say, hey, give me a call, because sometimes they have a little more pull with landowners and can kind of wiggle the way in there. If they offer, I'll go with them, I'll make sure everything's safe, everything's kosher. But even conservation officers can't trespass onto property to help you recover an animal.
Yeah, so you definitely want the biggest, gnarliest.
Exactly. Now, what's interesting about that, however, and I've had this situation happen, that's why I know about this. Years ago, I had permission on a small piece with a similar situation where the neighbors hunted. So if you shoot a deer and it runs on that ground, and the way it worked out is I shot the deer, it ran on the neighbor's ground. The neighbor told me, no, I can't get it. I called the conservation. They had runs in with conservation in the past. Conservation showed up, basically told them that, hey, either you let him get the deer or you need to get the deer because it's wanton waste if you don't. So they could write him a ticket. So they went out and tagged my deer. Well, I had proof that I shot the deer. I had video of them tagging the deer and carrying it off. This is a weird gray area, but that technically they are stealing my game animal at that point, and that is also a ticketable offense in this state. And it's only a ticketable offense because I had definitive proof that I shot the deer and that they are the ones that took it. And I'm talking, this deer literally died 10 yards across the property line.
Oh, geez, that might have been worth just getting like a rope or something, lassoing it and dragging it. That's not trespassing, right?
Yeah. But I'm standing there with my phone recording them picking up this deer, tagging it, and all that stuff. So they ended up getting a ticket for tagging my deer, but it's one of those really weird situations. And those are kind of strings I've seen conservation officers pull also. Deer runs on the neighbor's property, neighbor hates hunting. Conservation says, well, it's going to lay there and go to waste. Technically I can't let that happen. Blah, blah, blah. So most situations I've seen in this state, conservation is really good about trying to help you get your deer.
Well, a couple things, when I went through hunter safety, I remember blatantly that, and this might be a Nebraska thing, but I believe it was the right of first blood or law of first blood, something to that effect. So, say me and my wife were out hunting and she shoots a deer and then it's just in a bad spot. It's not something I feel comfortable with her going back and putting a final round into it if it's still alive, because that is a wounded animal and there's not a lot of area. Okay, well, we're not going to let it sit there and suffer. I'll go back and I'll put the final shot in. That deer is still technically hers. Or a better example would be if you shoot a deer and it runs to the neighbor's property, neighbor shoots that deer, that's still technically your deer, law of first blood.
Gotcha. So here in Illinois, we don't have a law. It's kind of one of those things that it's covered in hunter safety, and it's kind of you make your own decisions on what you think is ethical. So for me, and I've had this excuse me, I've had this situation also. First deer I ever killed on public land, I was hunting, and this deer comes up over the corner or over the hill, and it's hunched up. It had been shot far back in the guts, like right in front of the back legs. Mm-hmm. Walked in front of me. I shot her. She ran 15 yards and died. She was struggling anyways. I'm like, okay, cool. I finished out the night. I can get down. And as I get down, I see a flashlight come up over the hill, and it's down at the ground and up. So looking for blood. I walk up, and it's a guy and his son. And what had happened is the son shot his first deer, made a bad shot. So they were trying to find it. They had given it a bunch of time. And I told him, I said, well, I I know the deer I shot is dead over there. Well, he started explaining to his son that since I shot and killed the deer, it's my deer. And I'm like, no, 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 no. No, you guys can tag it. You know, you can take it. I'm not going to take the kid's first deer. But the way I generally view things, if that deer is wounded and it's a poor shot and I put the shot in it that kills it, that's my animal.
Right.
Because now, flip side, you know, you're hunting just over the ridge from me and I come in and set up and don't know you're over there. And you shoot a deer, double lung it, and it runs up over the ridge, and I shoot it again because it stops and I don't realize you double lunged it. Your shot is lethal. That's your animal, whether I shot it or not. To me, it's the lethal shot that makes the difference.
Well, that's a good point. I think it's deemed law first blood, but I think really it's, hey, don't be an asshole type thing. I don't know if it's in writing that it's a law.
Sure.
It's definitely, it's the right thing, you know, like in a situation where you put a lethal shot on a deer, even one lung, you know, that's lethal enough. They can go for a very long time, but eventually they will go down. But if someone puts the last shot into it,
well, you know, so that's a great circumstance, right? Like that's a great example. One lung, to me, you one lung a deer, that deer walks in front of me and I double lung it, my deer, because it's almost like darts, closest to the center, for lack of a better term, right? It's whoever's shot is more lethal. So, you know, I one lung a deer, it runs up over the hill, and you double lung it. That's your deer. I should have done better. You know, that deer could have died. That deer also could have made it. I've shot deer that have one collapsed lung. I've seen deer survive things like that. A buddy of mine in Southern Illinois sent me a trail cam photo 3 or 4 years ago, and it was going around on social media, but it was a buck that had an arrow right behind its front leg. I mean, it looked like to be the most perfect shot ever. This deer's in a food plot eating away.
Oh, they're insanely tough animals.
Unbelievably tough animals.
Have you seen those pictures? I see them float around on like Facebook, Instagram, whatever, now and then. And someone like tries to headshot a deer with a bow, and the bone just grows over that. Like, oh, you'd think they'd go down from infection at least.
I mean, yeah, but you never know. Well, it's like you see pictures of deer that have their jaws blown off by people that try to head shoot them with a gun. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that sucks because that deer's out there trying to, usually you see those deer really thin on the brink of starvation because they can't eat anymore. But, I mean, those deer are still up and walking around and completely missing a bottom jaw.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, and that's why, again, I kind of look at who put the most lethal shot on the animal. It's all about, are you the one to kill it or not? Mm-hmm. If you are, you know, then it's your deer. But that situation with that kid, I mean, that kid couldn't have been 12, maybe 13. And I'm like, I am not about to take this kid's deer. So, you know, I was like, nope, man, you put a good one on it. I just finished it off. Like, go over there. And, you know, the dad knew. He knew the situation. But that kid was so excited. He ran over and, you know, the dad thanked me and like, nah, dude, it's not the end of the world for me. I'm not starving to death out here. It's way more important that kid has a good experience in the woods than it is. So that was a super kind of cool situation. I'm going to be honest, though. If it had been just dad in the woods and he come up over the hill, I think we'd have had to have a conversation. Like, dude, you should have done better. Like,
right.
You know? So it's all situational.
No doubt. I mean, and, you know, I've put gut shots on deer is actually my first 2 deer. I was 11, 12, however old I may have been, with my bow. I forgot my release, and whenever I pull back and let the arrow go with my fingers, it always goes left.
Yep.
Well, on my first deer, what happened is the arrow jets off left, hits doe in the guts. She bops into the next field and kind of disappears into the woods. And, well, here comes another deer. Well, that shot didn't go. That was fluky. So I did it again. I'm out of tags. Oh, here comes a buck. I was just ready to let it arrow fly until I was out of arrows. Every deer.
Sure.
But anyway, fast forward, those deer had bedded down in the next field, gut shot, wounded. And we had to wait till dark. So dark comes and Dad makes a judgment call. We're just going to come back in the morning and look. Come back and they had dumped down into the creek. So, was it the best shot? No. Did I put lethal shots on the deer? Technically, yes.
Yes.
So that's one of those grayish areas. I mean,
Yeah.
They need their guts.
And like, that's kind of why I say it's like a closest to the center game,
Yeah.
If you'd have double lunged those deer and they ran down and then Dad shot them, those are your deer.
Yeah.
You shot them. They were going to die, even if because I've seen freak things, man. I shot a deer with a 2-inch Grim Reaper whitetail special one time. Perfectly. It was high, entered high on the right side and middle of the left lung. So top of the right lung, middle of the left lung, stuck in the ground. That deer ran 250 yards before it died. And the broadhead opened perfectly. I had a nice big 2-inch entrance, it was probably an inch entrance because it hadn't fully opened, and a full 2-inch exit. It bled great. It ran 250 yards before it died.
Did you just keep bumping it, or?
No, it's just. I mean, I put a good shot on it. I probably waited 30, 45 minutes before I got down and started tracking, and I found it 250 yards away dead. Last year, 2 years ago, we'll say a couple years ago, a buddy of mine shot a buck during the rut. Mm-hmm. Shot it with a Ramcat, 1.5 inch or fixed blade broadhead, quartering away. He hit the back of the right lung, cut all the ventricles in the heart, top of the left lung, front, kind of middle of the left lung, and buried it in his offside shoulder. That buck ran almost 200 yards before it died.
That buck had a lot of other things on its mind, though.
Blood everywhere. Everywhere. I was like, dude, you could have made a more perfect shot. And that deer ran forever. So there's just weird circumstances that some deer, I think some deer are just tougher than others, for lack of a better term.
Oh, and there might be something to that. I've noticed, like growing up, after I made them 2 bad shots, I made the conscious, I guess, pledge, if that's what you want to call it. I will not put another bad shot on a deer. Now, obviously, it's happened one more time. I put an absolutely terrible shot on a deer. I shouldn't say absolutely terrible. It just wasn't as lethal as it should have been. Sure. But up until a couple years ago, I'd have deer dying. Just shoot them dead, within 10 yards of where I hit them. And now it's like I'm tracking deer all the damn time. So maybe deer are just getting tougher. Maybe it's something they're putting in the corn. I don't know. But, man.
Some growth hormones in that corn.
Something, man. I mean, geez Louise. I go a career of hunting of no tracking at all. No more than 20 yards to having to track. And I'm not putting worse shot on deer. I'm still double lunging every time I pull the trigger.
Sure. Yeah, man, it's weird. There's just I don't have an answer. I mean, I've shot 3 years ago, maybe it's 4 now. I've shot 3 deer that season, and the furthest track job I had was 47 yards. Mm-hmm. The closest was 23. But I've like that doe and those were all fixed blade broadheads. Nope, I lied. One of those was a mechanical. But those are all short track jobs. Deer didn't go anywhere. I made good shots on them. But then I've had deer like that Grim Reaper. Great shot, 250 yards. Mm-hmm. The first deer I ever killed was with a 3-inch mechanical called the Nextra Archery Clean Kill. Very small company that didn't last long. Double lunged it, and that deer ran 110 yards, 120 yards. You figure a 3-inch cut through both lungs, and it still ran that far. I mean, that's no joke.
That's a long ways to run with no air going through your system.
Exactly. So I think I don't have an explanation. I think it's got to do. I think part of it is just the personality of the animal. Maybe some of them have a stronger desire to live than others, or maybe some of them have been through things in the past that they've lived through that gives them that desire. Maybe they are putting something in the corn. I mean, I don't really have an answer. Maybe it's just an adrenaline thing where if the animal comes in and they're kind of edgy, mm-hmm. and you shoot them, they're already on edge. Their adrenaline's already kind of gone. They run longer. I don't know, but I totally know what you mean. It's just, it's so hit or miss.
I guess one thing might be the actual maturity of the animal.
Sure.
It wasn't until probably 5, 5, 6, 7, I don't know, whenever I moved back, that I started actually taking time. We're going to pass up these 2 and 3 year olds and we're going to focus on 4 plus. Maybe it's the age on
Yeah.
my end, you know.
Well, and it could be because that doe that I shot with that Grim Reaper, I mean, she was an old nanny. I mean, she
Mm-hmm.
big old doe, and that's a possibility. I'd have to sit down and really think about that. Maybe just as they get older, they get tougher.
Maybe. I just saw an article. Maybe I saw a video. I don't know. I just received information not that long ago. Someone tagged out on a doe that they aged at 20 years old.
Holy crap, that is cool as hell.
That's really cool, man. Could you imagine how miserable that doe must have been? Because they only live what? A doe, I think they said a doe's average lifespan is like 5 to 6 years in the wild.
That'd be like us being 150 years old.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how awful that would be?
Dude, I don't want to. If I can't go to the woods anymore, I don't really want to keep living, man.
That's me. That's me to a T. I can imagine that doe. That doe's walking out in front of every hunter she can possibly find, and they're like, "Oh, that's that old nanny that we love and has been around for years. We're just gonna let her pass." Shoot me,
please.
That's crazy though. 20 years old.
And then they also said, the average lifespan of a buck is like 2 to 3 years old.
That doesn't surprise me.
Me neither. Especially with, rifle season. At least here, rifle season is right in the middle of the rut. So Every young buck is trying to chase any little whiff of something he can get.
That's excuse me. That's the case in most states. I've actually found. I've here recently, especially. I've been looking more and more into hunting other states and just going around and like experiencing, new things and just new situations. And I've noticed a lot of states have their rifle seasons like dead middle of rut or pre-rut. And, coming from Illinois, we don't even have a rifle season truly. We have just this year we can shoot straight wall cartridges. So we have no bottleneck cartridges. We do, but there's extreme limitations. And we can shoot slug shotguns and muzzleloaders. And our gun season, the first weekend is 3 days. Then there's a week span. It's the weekend before Thanksgiving is 3 days. Then you have Thanksgiving. Then the weekend after is 4 days. And then there's a 3-day muzzleloader season. That's it. So we only have 10 days of gun hunting total. And only 7 of those are with modern firearms.
You get the caliber of deer Illinois puts out to the caliber that Nebraska puts out.
Well, and that's why the 2 major factors for Illinois is food, because we're a heavy ag state, and then we don't have those firearm seasons. And there's been a lot of griping and complaining about our first firearm season because sometimes our rut will hit a little late, and you'll catch them chasing in that first firearm weekend, and a ton of deer that could have potentially got away otherwise are dead because of it. So, I mean, stuff like that. I mean, if you want more trophy potential as a state, if you want to attract more out-of-state hunters because of your trophy potential, right there's an easy fix.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, that 10 days of a gun season isn't terribly uncommon. I think it's a little more uncommon for it to be so broken up and that you have to use straight wall cartridges.
Yeah.
But like in Nebraska, it's the week before Thanksgiving. So that prior Saturday, Sunday, week before Thanksgiving, Saturday, Sunday, which I guess isn't 10, it's 9 days.
Right.
Of rifle season. We don't have limitations on that.
Sure. Well, and those rifle limitations make a lot of difference, though. I mean, you figure a straight wall cartridge is good to, we'll say 200 yards max. Like maybe you stretch a little further depending on how good a shot you are. A 7mm rim mag is a 500-yard gun if you can shoot.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you get into like 280 Nosler and stuff like that. It's, there's guys that'll shoot those guns 1,000 yards.
Oh yeah. It
makes a huge, it makes a huge difference when I can still only reach out to 200 yards, but you guys can do double, triple that.
Right.
That impact is huge.
I mean, even 200 yards, that's still a poke in the sense of the deer doesn't, if you have a general idea of where those deer are moving around at, they don't really have much chance.
Yep, 100%. And I mean, there's a lot of guys that fought against the straight wall cartridge thing for a long time, for rifle hunting, period. The thing about straight wall cartridges is they don't have any more ability than the slug guns and muzzleloaders we already have. And I mean, there's slug guns out there that'll do, 1-inch group at 300 yards easily.
Yeah.
Much less if you get into the custom stuff. I mean, you can get on YouTube and look up like custom, Seekins, muzzleloaders, and those guys are shooting those things 600-700 yards.
And I'm sorry, that's a straight wall?
That's a muzzleloader.
Oh my.
That's a poke. That's a poke with a freaking regular rifle, and these guys are doing it with muzzleloaders. It's just a high-end custom built, built for accuracy type muzzleloader.
Well, and here again, look at the caliber of deer Illinois has, though. Illinois is a trophy state.
Iowa's the same way. Iowa has straight wall cartridges. They have basically the same gun regulations we do as far as available firearms. They have a short gun season. They're also a $1 state, and it's extremely hard for a non-resident to go hunt the state.
Non-resident is a draw, I think, for Iowa, isn't it?
Yeah, and at this point, if you want to draw into some of the best areas, you're waiting 6 years.
Yeah. Missouri, though, you can go hunt Missouri and buy, I'm pretty sure, over the counter.
You can. You can come to Illinois with a bow and buy over the counter.
Really?
Yep. If you want to bow hunt Illinois, you can buy right over the counter and go. But with a firearm, you have to draw.
Oh, you might be getting a phone call from me.
Come see me. Anytime. Come see me.
No, I have a friend. He hunts down in Missouri, and he's got friends. They either have a lease or they own land down. One of the two. He has access to 300 acres of private, and they are very particular. And he was telling me that just with tags, I think he said it was either under or right around 500 with licenses and tags.
It'd be under, because tags are 326, I want to say, and that gives you a buck and a doe. And then I think out of state hunting license is $100.
Yeah, so it'd be just shy of that 500 and everything. But then, he pitches in for food plots, and I think he said this year he paid for all the food plot seed and stuff. So, I mean, it adds up when you put that amount of effort in, but he also doesn't shoot small deer down there.
Correct. And there's a really good opportunity on public land in Missouri, too, if you put in the work. I have a buddy that lives in Missouri. He hunts a lot of urban stuff, just all over the place. And he's killed some absolute studs. But he also does there we go. Yeah. He also does a public land hunt with some buddies of his where they all roll up and camp for like a week during rut. I mean, they kill 130 plus. They usually kill 2 or 3 130 plus between 5 guys every year.
Yeah.
And that's on public.
130s, a lot of people, especially as the internet has grown in popularity amongst hunters and everything, people look at a 130 and they'll say it's big without knowing it's a 130.
The amount of people that can't guess proper or that can't guess size is astounding.
Well, and I'm never going to act like I'll get within, 15 to 20 inches, but I don't care. That's the thing. I don't care.
And that's me.
If you are excited enough to pull the trigger, pull the trigger. But now
Bingo.
If you're also the guy that when your buddy shoots a big one and you're genuinely jealous and say it must be nice, but then you turn around and shoot a spike, you might want to do some evaluation there.
The thing that frustrates me more than anything is the guys that shoot a deer. It's not the biggest, and they post a picture. I'm like, dude, if it's not the biggest, first off, it's one of two things. Are you afraid people are going to make fun of you for shooting a smaller deer? Because if so, fuck them. Their opinion doesn't matter. Or are you ashamed that you shot a deer that small? And if so, why are you shooting that deer?
Yeah, right on the nose.
So it's like those posts, and I used to be in a ton of Facebook groups, and I've cut down my Facebook groups and total use of Facebook significantly, but I got so tired of it. It's not my biggest, but it's not my biggest, but, and it's like, dude, that's 100 and, it'd be 140-inch public land deer. I'm like, that's a freaking tank. It's hard on public land, man. You should be proud of that deer. Oh, why are you saying it's not the biggest? Yeah. Because Joe 7 posts above you posted a 178-inch deer on his perfectly manicured 1,500 acres that his family's owned and manicured for the past 20 years. You're not comparing apples to apples.
By no means.
It was easier in a situation like that where you have a family that's been manicuring land for a long period of time and it's that size of land. It is easier to shoot that 180-inch buck than it will ever be to shoot a 130-inch deer on public land.
Well, and you don't need even that much land.
No.
If you got a solid, I don't want to say 80 because 80 is kind of small, but if you can turn that 80 into something great where the deer don't necessarily have to leave, you can produce really, really nice whitetails.
We have a guy local here, and he's an older guy. He may have passed away now, but I got to talk to him and meet him one time. And this guy was notorious in our area for killing giant deer. I'm talking 10 years in a row, he killed a deer over 150 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody could figure out how he was doing it. And finally, as he got older and hunted less, he started talking to more people. And he didn't tell me directly, but I was talking with a buddy who introduced me, and he told him, he goes, the way he's doing it, he's going and getting permission on 1 acre pieces, 3 acre pieces, maybe a tree line in a field. And that's where he's shooting on those deer. And what he's doing is he's going to these little pieces, getting this permission because nobody else is getting it, because nobody else cares. And he's only hunting it once or twice a year on the perfect days. So his biggest deer he ever killed was 187 inches, and he killed it on a tree line on the back edge of a field. And what it was is he was driving by one day and saw that deer walking that edge. He went and got permission, set up a ground blind back in there, and waited for the perfect day and snuck back in there and killed that deer.
Yeah, that'd be the way to do it.
You can kill giants on little pieces. It's all about location. The reason that tree line worked out, and I know exactly where that tree line is because I've tried to get permission on both the bigger tracts of timber on either side. Mm-hmm. But that's why that tree line worked, is there was a big tract of timber here, and there was a big tract of timber here, and that tree line was just that travel corridor for that buck to go back and forth and bounce between bedding areas.
Yeah.
He went in, it was like November 3rd or 4th, and he went in and killed that buck.
The guy that tunes up my bow and everything, he works for Department of Roads, so he's like all day scouting, just grading roads, looking for deer, and he'll get on Onyx. Well, yeah, I can get in here. I can ask for here. I can ask for here, and he's just writing down remembering names, whatever, remembering the area and the spot, and
dropping pens and.
He doesn't care if it's 2 acres. He doesn't care if it's 100 acres. He's going to go door knocking if he sees something he likes.
Well, it's like that. I have a permission on a piece this year. It's 60 acres total, but only 10 acres-ish is huntable. And all it is a tree line that runs through a field. Mm. And that's one of those places that I got pictures last year of very, very good deer on that property. Now, last year, there was a couple other guys that had permission to hunt it, and it kind of blew up the area because they were in there a lot. Mm-hmm. This year, I was told that those guys probably won't be in there. If they're in there at all, it may only be once or twice. So now it's a low impact, and I'll go in and maybe hunt it once or twice on the perfect days. And I mean, there's a lot of potential for me to shoot very good deer out of there. One end of it ties into a city park that can't be hunted. The other end of it is across the road from a large bedding area with a lady that absolutely loves deer. They're her pets. She won't allow hunting or anything. Mm. So I'm basically hunting that travel corridor between the two big bedding areas where those deer can't be hunted at all.
Well, that's a situation you're going to want your big expandables.
Exactly.
Because those deer run back into her place, you're not getting it back.
Nope, I'll never get it. No way.
That's really a shame.
You know what? It upsets me more than anything. I could shoot the biggest buck of my life and it could run on the ground, and what would upset me more is that meat's going to spoil. than that rack.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a meat hunter. I really am. I don't care about trophy. Would I shoot a big buck? Absolutely. I don't have it in me at this point in my life to dedicate time to only shoot big bucks because I like to eat deer meat and I like the idea of being able to provide deer meat for my family and my friends and the people that I love. And if I only went in and shot big bucks, I would pass so many opportunities to shoot does that, I mean, I would starve. I wouldn't starve, but like I'm not getting any deer meat that year. I did that one year. I dedicated a season to hunting big bucks. Said I'm going to do it just to prove I can. That season, I had 5 encounters with deer over 140 inches on public. 2 encounters were close, and I messed both of those opportunities up. But I passed probably 30 does that year. And it's like every time a doe walks by me, I'm just like, I feel miserable. I could be eating, that could be backstraps. I could be doing a cookout for my family this weekend.
Yeah,
I just don't have it in me.
I don't know how you guys do it in Illinois as far as purchasing tags, but like every year I'll buy a season choice tag and then I'll buy my standard archery tag. I screwed up one year. I had this buck that I've been after for 4 or 5 years, however long it had been. And I was like, I'm getting that deer. Well, I bought an archery tag and a rifle tag and filled the archery tag on a buck that had a lot of ground shrinkage to him, and then tried to replace the rifle tag with bow tag. That wasn't happening.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But anyway, since then, I just buy my antlerless tag, which will run me all of archery, all of rifle, all of muzzleloader, and then into the late season as well. And then I'll have my standard archery, which I can fill on a doe and still be able to go and buy another buck tag or
Gotcha.
$2, whatever works out.
So here, every year I buy a combination tag. So it's a either sex buck or doe and 1 doe tag. So I always have a doe tag in my pocket that I can just fill. But I also have that either sex. And I've had situations before where it's like, I go and shoot a doe, I go and hunt the next day, and I fill that either sex tag with a doe, and then a buck will walk by. And it's like, meh. It doesn't break my heart because I've already got the meat on the ground.
Right. Well, and once you have that meat in the freezer too, I know you said you don't care as much about racks, but I do.
Sure.
In my mind, once that doe is filled, okay, I have food for the next 4, 5, 6 months. My wife is going to buy a rifle tag. She's going to fill her tag regardless. We're going to get a deer on the ground for her. So, and we don't buy meat from the store unless it's like chicken or like quick meals and stuff. Our diet is almost primarily venison. We just did up some tacos tonight, venison tacos. That was great. But once the tags are filled and the meat's in the freezer, okay, now I can go and head hunt. I'm still going to eat the meat or I'll donate it, whatever. But now I can look for something with a little bit of bling on his head. That's how I do it.
And for me, I need to shoot probably 3 deer a year. So for me, my focus is those 3 deer. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I've had seasons where I shoot 1. I've had seasons where I shoot, that season 3 or 4 years ago, I shot 3 in 10 days, 12 days. And I spent the rest of the year looking for a buck. Never came across anything that I cared to shoot. I never really put myself in a situation where I could fill another doe tag the rest of the year either. With those 3 in the freezer, I was kind of like, well, I'll just use this to kind of hunt areas I've always been curious about, but never wanted to dedicate the time to because I knew I had other good areas.
Right.
So that's the other thing I do too, is because I hunt public so much, I spend a lot of time scouting. I mean, I shoot a deer, I fill those 3 tags or I put those deer in the freezer. I may spend the rest of the season just bouncing around and trying areas out that I've kind of looked at but didn't want to put time into. Mm-hmm. And they may all be garbage. They may be a situation where they looked good before season and then I get in there and it's during season and there's so much foot traffic and human interruption that they're bad. So
yeah,
I use that as learning experience time.
Learning experience time is important time.
Yeah, more people would be more successful if they spent time scouting.
Oh, absolutely. There's not near enough time. There there's a couple spots that I'm looking into getting into that I've never sat before. It's like, geez, I've been hunting the same spot for 10, 15 years. Now I got to go kind of relearn the basics again of just, okay, where are the deer at? How do I find the deer? I got to go and remember how to do all that.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, to me, that's a big part of the fun. So that's another reason I'm totally the guy, and I'm awful about this. I'm totally the guy that'll have a spot picked out on the map, and I'll get there and I'll be like, yeah, this looks really good, but what's over that hill? And then I'm up over that hill and I'm like, oh, this looks good too. What about that hill? And before I know it, it's 45 minutes left of shooting light and I'm still not up in a tree. And I'm like, oh, I should probably sit somewhere to hunt because I've spent the last 2 hours walking an extra, 800,000 yards looking for every little bit of sign and picking things apart. And I'm like, I should probably actually hunt if I'm going to do this. I end up 9 times out of 10, it's not even getting in a tree. I sit on the ground in a bush or something.
Yeah. One thing that just like with the property I hunt is what I'll do, what I did. I shouldn't say what I'll do. I have it pretty well figured out now. So we had one stand set up on a very heavily used trail between food and bed. Okay, well, what's happening behind me? Okay, there are deer moving through there all the time. Well, maybe we need to get back to that side of the trees, check that out. And I'm always armed scout. I call it armed scouting, where I go and I pick a spot and I'll sit there with a bow, see what they're doing. Okay, how can I adjust? So I don't necessarily just walk around and scout in that manner. I'll find one spot that looks really, really good, set up. Okay, now how can I adjust from right here? Because I always have my primary point.
Right.
That works for me because I hunt 1, maybe 2 sections right now, and I've been hunting that same spot for 10, 15 years.
Right.
However long it's been. It's been a minute. So I've been able to watch and learn what the animals are doing. How do they change from, times of the year to year even. I have certain stands that are good one year, and the next year these other stands are better. So
yeah, so my situation, the primary piece of public I hunt is almost 16,000 acres. So I can't, I've been hunting it this is my 11th season, and I still haven't covered everywhere that I want to cover. I have good spots, but there's still so much that I want to learn about that I haven't. Then not only do I hunt that, I hop around to a lot of other public pieces. I've got several pieces within an hour of me. So within an hour of me, I've got that piece that's 16,000. I've got another piece that's probably 3,800. I've got another one that's probably 2,500, and I've got 4 that are 500 or less. And then I have just like an hour and 10 minutes away another that's a little over 3,000 acres. So I hop around and hit a lot of that.
Yeah,
so for me, it's like, I go into hunt an area and it's like, well, I haven't been here since the beginning of last season. Maybe I need to look around a little bit, and I end up spending a day looking around. But more often than not, what I find, especially if I've got 2 days to hunt back to back, is I'll hit that area and I'll look around, and if I find really good sign, I'll be back up in there the next day. And basically what I did is take that first day to scout for my second day's hunt. So I do that quite a bit, and it's been super successful for me. That matter of fact, that year that I was on the 5 bucks over 140, 3 of those I found by doing that, is diving into new areas I had never been, and checking it out. And, oh man, there's rubs all over here. There are multiple years of rubs where, this one's maybe 3 years old, but this one last year, and here's a fresh one. And they're big trees, or, one was a thorn bush that was just absolutely destroyed. I'm like, well, if it's a thorn bush, obviously his antlers are big enough that he's not getting hit by the thorns. I set up and I found that and set up the next evening and had an encounter with that deer at 60 yards with 3 to 5 minutes of shooting light left, where I was just not comfortable taking that shot. And that was the biggest deer I've ever seen on hoof while hunting. I'm not worth a shit at guessing size, but I mean, at least every bit of 170. I mean, huge. I found out later a friend of mine hunts that area and had trail cam pictures of that deer 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a company that makes a software where you can plug in a deer's trail cam picture and it'll give you a rough guess of the inches.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but he plugged that in and it told him it was 150. And that was 2 years previous to that me having an encounter with him.
Yeah, don't
Now,
take
of
those unsure
course,
shots.
well, and that had easily been the biggest deer I'd ever shot. Like no contest
Mm-hmm.
by a large amount. But it's just like it's not worth taking that shot and potentially wounding that deer. Just wasn't worth it.
Yeah, I made that mistake. Oh, I didn't wound the deer. I flat out missed the deer twice. But thank God twice, kind of. But it was right at that brisk. I could see my pins. And I lined up on the deer and I was shaking so bad, man. I mean, this was a monster buck. Every bit of a big deer.
Yeah.
And I let that arrow go and I just hear a loud thwack. I got it. And, this was before I got into Luminox. This was a big reason why I got into the Luminox.
Sure.
But this deer, I saw him just prop up and he goes to 30 yards, does not care about anything that just happened. I could have swore I hit it. I thought I heard it hit, line up again. Okay, I could still see the outline. I could still see my pins, let it go again. Another thwack. Okay, I hit this deer twice. I had a buddy of mine with me. He goes, no, I think you just missed twice. Yeah, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. We get down out of the tree and find one arrow, nothing but mud. Oh, that's discouraging. Find the second arrow, nothing but mud. And I went and I ate and kind of drank my sorrows away that night. But reflecting on that, good thing I missed, because who knows where that arrow would have actually hit. That's one of those lessons that you just kind of learn as you go. It's something that you make a judgment call on, you make the wrong call, and you realize after the fact, okay, I probably shouldn't have done that. I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just the thought, like wounding a deer and losing it. You hunt long enough, it's going to happen, man. I mean, it happens. Nobody likes it, but what you need to do is reflect and take that as a learning experience.
Oh, absolutely.
And exactly like you just said, if you go back and you think, you're like, okay, that was bad. I'm never going to do that again. That's how you get better as a hunter. That's how you become more ethical as a hunter.
Yeah.
The reason I didn't shoot at that deer is because I had situations in the past where I had a year. So probably my 5th or 6th year hunting. It's getting late. I can barely see my pins. This doe walks out. I hadn't seen a whole deer all day. I'm sitting in this buddy stand on private ground, and this deer walks out, and it's feeding. And I'm like, oh man, that's a doe. Perfect. So I shoot it. Runs off and dies. I get up, and it's a little spike buck. It was dark enough I couldn't see the spikes.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have never shot that spike buck in a million years, but because it was so dark, I had 2 minutes of shooting light left. Speaking of dark, 2 minutes of shooting light left. I took the shot anyways, and it was, that was the experience that taught me, okay, not unless you know for sure what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Yeah.
So.
And that's the unfortunate part of the situation. This buck had ran up. He came across an open field where it was still light enough, and I had seen him. It's like, oh my God. I was shaking the whole tree, and this isn't a small tree. And he steps into the timber. It's like, yep, there's that timber darkness that you never want to believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, since then, if it gets to a point where I can kind of see the pin, but not really, yeah, I'll do a quick survey. I have a red headlamp for getting in and out because I won't spook the deer. I'll scope around. Okay, there's nothing here. I'm done. Yep. I'm out. I'm not even going to put myself in that situation anymore.
Camera light is a big thing for me because I film everything. Basically, when it gets to the point my camera can't see anymore, I'm done.
Well, and with the camera I've been using in the past, I got a new camera this year, But the camera I've used in the past, usually when that stops being able to see, is usually about the time I couldn't see. So it kind of
Yep.
worked out.
Yep. And that's how my setup is. About the time my camera light's rough, my pens, I'm not shooting anymore. And I mean, what's wild about that is exactly what you just said. You know, if I'm hunting a field edge, I have another 5 minutes of camera light, another 5 minutes of shooting light versus if I'm sitting back in the timber.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they make those lighted pins, and I ran those lighted pins there for a stint thinking, okay, this is my ticket out of this. Until one day I had a doe. I know it was a doe. She walked up 15 yards broadside. I drew back, and I went from seeing a deer to seeing nothing. So I let down the arrow. It's like, all right, well, I got to wait for her to get out of here, then I'll get down. But at that point, I kind of came to a thought that maybe these lighted pins are more for blinds than they are for timbers.
Yeah, where it's dark in the blind because of the way it's brushed in, but it's still plenty of light outside, so you're not blinding yourself. Yeah, and I mean, adjustable light systems make a lot of difference in that aspect as well. But even I've had some adjustable light systems that even on the dimmest setting are like, I can't see. I don't know what's going on. So I have on my site now, I've got, the light for pens, and I've kind of gotten to the point where it's like, if I have to turn that on, I'm just not going to shoot.
Yeah.
If you get some good bright pens, that's usually how it is anyways. At the point you're turning it on, you should probably be double thinking, maybe this isn't the best idea.
No, I just upgraded to the HHA optimizer single pin.
Yep.
And it's got a little spot for light. And, I've had people ask, well, you going to put that light on there? No, because that's going to do nothing but instill a false level of confidence in how long I can actually sit.
Yep. And the HHAs are good bright pen. So it's not like you're losing out because you got dull pens or anything like that. You can sit your full shooting time anyways, despite those pens.
Yeah.
Or despite, because you get into cheap sites like those 3-pen True Glows that are really cheap end, low end. Then you do start to have issues with being able to see pens when there's still 10 minutes of shooting light left.
Yeah.
But when the minute you start to get into the higher end sites, that goes away.
Well, and that's good to know. I mean, I'm glad that, I'll be able to see for longer when I'm out there. I have some friends that use that HHA. I have some friends that hate it. Honestly, I kind of badmouthed them for a long time because it was one more moving part.
Sure.
Until there was a group of us, and they were getting ready to go antelope hunting, so they were shooting out there at 50, 60, 70 yards. I was like, the target's not my sight picture anymore, boys. We got a problem.
Yep.
So, all right, go to Shields, buy the HHA. And that was honestly, if I remember to range and do everything right, it'll be a game changer.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of doing it.
Well, and I'll tell you, a lot of guys that I've sold HHAs or single pins to in general, what they do is they go, okay, the furthest I shoot a deer is 30 yards. So if I take that pin and set it at 25, I know to aim a little low for 20, right on at 25, and a little high for 30.
Well, and I don't know where everyone's putting their pins. I've kind of gotten into this habit where I don't aim truly into that armpit. I find my shoulder, I put the pin behind it, let the arrow go. So I mainly only hunt from, elevated surfaces. So I'm going to double lung. It won't necessarily be a high shot because it'll come out the bottom side of the backside. But where the hell was I going? Anyway, 20 yards, with my particular setup, there's not a big enough gap between 20 and 30 for me to worry about it.
Yep.
And I know people, maybe they shoot lower poundage, they got a little bit bigger gaps, so they do have to make that adjustment. But one way or another, inside of 30 yards, I can leave it set at 20.
Yep. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. If you're one of those guys that you're like, hey, I just don't shoot past 30, or if you're in a situation where it's like past 30, I have time to range, to move my pen, to do what I need to do. I think a single pin slider is really tough to beat. There's Very few things. The only thing that has a cleaner sight picture than a single pin slider is the EZV bow sight. That's it. Nothing else. Nothing else has a cleaner sight picture.
I've never
Because
heard
there's not.
that.
EZV is a really, really cool sight invented by a really, really good dude. It lives in Montana, and it's a range finding bow sight with no batteries or anything like that. It uses mathematics to basically figure out the range of, without getting really deep in the weeds, it uses the width of the animal's rib cage, which no matter how large the animal is, like from an elk to a whitetail, for example, there's only really a 2-inch difference or 3-inch difference, but it uses that and then mathematics with the trajectory of your arrow to determine how wide of spacing it needs for that V. The V sight is shaped like a V, and that's how you shoot. And it's you can see directly through, so you can watch your arrow flight through your sight the entire way.
How does that work? How does that work without batteries?
It's a polymer disc that goes inside the sight.
Oh,
so you switch out the disc based on the trajectory or the speed of your bow.
Huh. Well, that sounds pretty slick.
It's an amazing, people look at it and think it's hokey because it's different, because it is completely different than anything on the market. But I'm telling you, I hunted with it for 6 years almost. I think 6 years actually. I've killed several animals with it. It's a great sight. It is the best bow hunting sight on the market. The only reason I'm not shooting it now is because I've gotten to the point where I'm starting to try new products and different products to see what I want to bring into my shop.
Okay.
So like I'm going through things. Is this quality? Is this not quality? Is this $100 sight worth the money? If not, I don't want to carry it and I'm not going to sell it to anybody. Maybe it's way worth the money and I need to sell those more than anything else. So that's the only reason I'm not still shooting the EZV, is because I am now playing with all different kinds of gear, testing out to see what I want in the shop, what's worth having in the shop and what's not. So this year I'm shooting a B3 sight that they just brought out at ATA, and I like it a lot. It's a great sight. It's everything you want out of a 3-pin slider sight. I don't know that it does anything more than any other 3-pin slider sight out there. So it's like, now that I know that, do I carry it or do I stick with HHA, who I know is also tried and true and in the same price range and has all the stuff? We're getting in the weeds kind of with the business side there, but essentially what I'm doing is narrowing down SKUs so I can carry products that hit all of the check marks for guys without having to carry 15 different products that only hit these two and these two. So that's the only reason I don't still shoot that sight. It's a freaking great sight. I'd recommend it to anybody, especially, he lives in Montana and he kills stuff in Montana, elk and obviously. But for us guys in the Midwest, or, whitetail hunters that are shooting, 20, 30, 40 yards, that sight is just freaking unbelievable.
Really?
There's nothing else better.
And that's really cool that you actually take the time. You're going to change your setups to actually inventory your shop. I was going through your shop last night. You don't have bad quality through there at all. I was trying to think of a different word, but you got really good quality stuff in your shop. And
what's wild is what you see on my website is like 1/100th of what I actually have access to. I just, right now, because I'm doing everything out of the house, I keep a very small inventory, and there's some things on that website that if you order it, I order it. Usually it gets to me within 2 days, 3 days max. So it's not like it's a long turnaround, but I can't do that with every product because I would have thousands of products on there and I can't keep up with that. I'd need an entire team to keep up with that. So right now what you're seeing is basically stuff that I know is really good quality, stuff that I know if I order it, it's got a quick turnaround, so you're not waiting forever, or it's something I have in stock. I'm also progressively redesigning my website. So like my custom arrow section now looks very different than it used to because it didn't make sense. I'll go through and eventually I'll go through my inventory and get rid of some stuff that I've found that I don't like or don't like working with the companies and add more stuff. And I'm like I said, I'm going through a full redesign of the website just to make it more user friendly.
Well, that's pretty user friendly as it stands now. I actually got it pulled up. You got your DIY shop, your custom arrow. I mean, it's extremely, it's to the point. You're not going to click into something and, oh, surprise, this isn't what I thought it was.
So yeah, the DIY shop is something else I want to expand on a lot. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I come from a DIY background. You know, I work on before I was doing the shop or any of that or working at shops, I was working on my own stuff, building my own arrows. I recognize that a lot of guys do that. So
Mm-hmm.
my goal, long term, my goal is to be the place to go if you're a DIY guy. I want to be the place because I have a deep appreciation from that world because that's where I started.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I'm going to be expanding on quite a bit, especially as I go into my own location. I'm going to have, even in location, I want to have a whole DIY section where, you know, if you want to come in and buy arrow shafts and fletchings and a jig and saws and do it all yourself, great, buy it all. If you want to sit down with me, I'll show you how to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I'll see expansion on in the future. I'll probably get away from camo products as much. Just there's so many out there, and that's something I have to carry a lot of
Right.
for everybody because of the sizes. So initially, I'll probably stay away from those. I really like Numa Gear. I was working with them for quite a while. They changed rep groups, and now can't get a hold of anybody to get my account set back up. So
I
that's
guess you're
kind of
not
been a
working with them anymore.
yeah, it's kind of been a pain in the ass. Um, I mean, I'm still trying to work with them. I think they make great camo, but this new rep group is not anything like it's supposed to be. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the future looks like. I don't know. I'm working on a lot of stuff. Got a lot of stuff down the pipes. I've got a bunch of videos I still need to make, and we've got 2 weeks till season.
We're already rolling
So,
on season here in Nebraska. We start on the 1st.
do you? Yeah.
Yeah. I always wait till crop come out. To me, there's no point in pushing them deer out. You know,
Right.
would it be cool to get a velvet buck? Yeah. Do I got some freak bucks on camera that don't need, but that I want to take out? Yeah. But have you ever tried dragging a deer through like, I don't know, 800 yards of standing corn? Not fun.
Yes. Not even a little. Yeah, I don't drag deer at all anymore. I just turn them into backpacks.
Oh, you do the
I
little slit thing and put their
Yep.
feet inside?
I do that or with zip ties. But yeah, and then I backpack them out. It's just easier. I hate dragging deer.
See, I wait till the crops are outside. When I kill the deer, I just drive down to the deer.
Can't drive on public land here.
No, you can't. Do you
Mm-mm.
ever think about doing like, I don't know, a sled or a cart?
So the public land I hunt, a cart doesn't make sense. We've tried it before.
Mm-hmm.
Some places it's okay. Other places it's awful. I'm not going to carry a cart with me all the time for maybe getting to use it. And then sleds are kind of hit and miss also, depending on where you're at. In the timber that I hunt, a sled would be miserable because there's so much small stem growth that there's no way. And
Mm-hmm.
you have the same problem with a deer cart. Um, but open fields and stuff, a sled would be nice, especially with snow on the ground or after rain when it's slick.
Yeah.
I've just, like I said, I've just gotten to where I turn them into backpacks or I carry my frame pack with me in a truck and then go in and cut it all up and put it in the frame pack and carry it out.
Whatever you gotta do to get it done, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's basically the entire life that I've lived is whatever you got to do to get it done. So why should deer hunting be any different?
Bingo. Bingo. But well, Trent, we're bumping at just over an hour. It's been great talking with you. We're gonna have to get together and do this again soon.
Anytime, man. I'm more than happy.
So, all right. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yep. Thank you guys.